thing, and I think the strongest thing that I really didn't understand till later, there's something called the Desjardins theory of addiction, which says that addiction stems from unmet needs. And there are three basic unmet needs: power and control, security, and sensation. And for me, it was all about security. Not financial security, but fitting in, knowing where I belonged, having an identity. Anything was better than being in the abyss, being in the dark, not knowing who I was. And for me, gambling and drugs became my way of selecting friends, my way of selecting activities, my way of controlling and picturing and moving my life forward. I can remember at my 10th, 20th, and 30th high school reunions, people coming up to me and saying, "Jeff B., I remember you, drugs and gambling." And I thought that was better than not being remembered. I went away to college in St. Louis, Washington University, and I remember going through an interview. And then they said to me, "Do you have any questions for us?" And I said, "How far are the nearest racetracks?" That was my question. And they said, "There are none in Missouri, but there are two just over the river in Illinois, Cahokia Downs and Fairmont Park." And I said, "Okay, I'm going to come to school here." And I like to say that my freshman year, I majored in gambling. Let me tell you what my life was like. 2 to 4, we'd play gin, for money, of course. 4 to 6 was backgammon, for money. We'd leave about 6 o'clock to go to the racetrack. We'd get back at about 11:30, and the poker game would begin at midnight. And we'd play till somebody had an 8 o'clock class, and I'd go to sleep, and I'd get up at 1 o'clock and start all over. I like to say I majored in gambling. I almost flunked out. I was put on probation because I put no time into my classes. I was just getting high and gambling. Those were the two things I loved. Those were my passions. I made it through college. I'm not sure how. And I went to law school. And it was in law school that I began betting on football. And football is really the story of progression, which is a part of all addiction. I started out betting the 2 TV games. Small bets on the 2 TV games. By the 3rd week of the season, I was betting 4 games. By the 7th week of the season, I was betting all 16 games on the card. And by the 10th week, I had 3 bookies. Not so I could shop for odds, but because I was embarrassed about how much I gambled. By the 2nd year, I was betting college football as well. And that's what I call progression. It went up and up in intensity, up and up in strength. I used to take 2 vacations every year. You can probably guess where I went. Every October, we went to Las Vegas. I went with 4 friends from kindergarten. Lucky I have a lot of old friends. And we'd get together. One from California, one from Florida, one from New Jersey, another one from California. We'd meet, and we'd stay, and we'd gamble, and we'd have fun. And my other vacation was every August. I'd go to Saratoga, New York. Now, what Saratoga has is a month of horse racing in August. And I'd stay at a hotel that was $75 a night, 11 months of the year, and $350 a night in August. And I loved being a big shot. And there was a big crowd of us, about 20 of us, and I would take everyone out the first night on my father's credit card. That's part of gambling, the narcissism, the wanting to be the big shot, wanting to feel all-powerful. And I continued to gamble for a pretty long time. And even when I stopped drugging, I would still go to Saratoga. And I'd go to the track, and I'd come in, and I'd stay in at night. I wouldn't even go in the streets because Saratoga was all about decadence. A lot of bars, very hip place. I loved it, though. The women were all dressed to the nines. The men would dress up. We'd take limos to the track. The beautiful hats. It was just, to me, the elegant lifestyle. I once wrote my story, and it was called Confessions of a High Roller. And I think that's kind of accurate. That's what I enjoyed. And it continued for a long time. And, you know, while you're gambling, you have a hard time seeing that it's out of control. I remember when I decided to stop, looking at step 1, that I was powerless over gambling and that my life had become unmanageable. I never had a doubt about powerlessness. I tried to stop hundreds of times in my life, and the next morning I'd say, "That's it, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to continue to gamble." I can remember one year trying to keep track of how much money I spent on drugs, on gambling, and after 2 weeks I stopped doing it because the numbers were too scary. But what I didn't recognize was that my life was powerless. I had a nice apartment, nice condo, all my bills were paid, I had a good law job. What was powerless about it? What was unmanageable about it? Until you were in the program, you didn't know. So I was a lawyer from 1979 to 1997. 1997, I decided to make a change in career. I was one of these people who was in my office 7 days a week, 7 a.m. And all of a sudden, I didn't want to be there. And I took it as a warning sign. And I said, what do I want to do with my life? And I wound up taking a battery of tests. And I really came down to 4 options. I thought about teaching. To me, the noblest of all professions, the idea of imparting knowledge to others and inspiring them to learn. People who touched me are the teachers I've had. I thought about consulting. I was tired of doing what I did, but I did it well. I was a maven in my field. I knew foreclosure law inside and out. I knew bankruptcy law representing creditors. Maybe I didn't want to do it. Maybe I could help other people. The third thing I thought about was writing. I've always had a love affair with words. Always enjoyed writing, but I remember a poem I once wrote in college. I said, if I give of my mind and take from my pocket, I'm losing. And I think that's why I decided not to write. And the fourth option was some kind of counseling. And I chose that because I thought it gave me an opportunity to do all 4. Within the counseling realm, you are a teacher, you are a writer, and you are in some ways consulting.